Mr. Xiao Chen, next. Minister Tan.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to address the following PQs on graduate employment and the graduate industry traineeships or GRID program together. Questions filed by Mr. Louis Chua and Ms. Eileen Chong from yesterday's sitting. Oral questions numbers 13 to 21 from today's order paper on graduate employment, and oral and written questions filed by Ms. Lee Hui Ying, Mr. Kenneth Tiong, Ms. Eileen Chong, Mr. Ng Si Xuan, Ms. Po Lee San, Ms. Nadia Ahmad Samlin, and Dr. Charlene Chen on the subsequent sittings also relating to graduate employment.
Please go ahead.
I would also like to invite all members to seek clarifications after and consider withdrawing the questions filed for future sittings if it has been addressed. Mr. Yip Hon Wing and Mr. Xie Yao Quan asked about the key factors contributing to the decrease in permanent employment of fresh graduates. First, I would like to clarify that we have not seen a decrease in permanent employment of fresh graduates in the 2025 cohort so far. Mr. Yip and Mr. Xie may be referring to the decrease in the permanent employment rate of fresh graduates 6 months after graduation from 2023 to 2024, reported in a joint autonomous universities graduate employment survey. Based on our data so far, we have in fact seen some improvement in employment rates from 2024 to 2025. As of June this year, around 9,300 graduates from the 2025 cohort, or 52%, were employed. This employment rate was higher than that of the 2024 cohort at the same time last year, when 8,600 graduates, or 48% of the 2024 cohort, were employed. The proportion of graduates in permanent employment has also increased, at about 44% in 2025 compared to 37% in 2024. I believe these figures will improve further as many graduates were only beginning their job searches in June. The employment rate of the 2024 cohort has risen from 48%, as mentioned earlier, to 88% this June. That said, members of the House, we recognize the anxieties and the challenges faced by fresh graduates in their job searches. Based on our data, we assess that this might be partly driven by a significantly higher number of fresh graduates from the 2025 cohort entering the job market immediately after graduation compared to a year ago, to last year. With your permission, Mr. Speaker, sir, may I display a chart to better illustrate my point, and may I ask the clerks to distribute a copy as well.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Members may also access these materials through the MP at SG Power app. So if you look at the chart that has been distributed, compared to the same time last year, there were about 2,400 more fresh graduates looking for a job, instead of either taking a gap break or going for further studies. Hence, even though there were about 700 more fresh graduates who were employed, the additional 1,700 active job seekers who had yet to find a job may have contributed to a stronger sense of job competition amongst fresh graduates. Moreover, external factors, including economic headwinds from increased trade tensions, the imposition of tariffs and geopolitical conflict and growing concerns over artificial intelligence taking over entry-level jobs have added to the anxieties of our fresh graduates. Therefore, even though graduate employment rates remain stable, we need to support the additional influx of graduates looking for work. We've introduced GRIT to give graduates an opportunity to pick up industry experience and practical skills to boost their employability in the longer term. This model builds on the positive results seen for the trainees who participated during the COVID-era SG United traineeships. To Ms. Eileen Chong's question, close to 90% of SGUT trainees found regular employment within 6 months after completion. While the median starting salary for degree graduate trainees who participated in the SG United Traineeship Program, or SGUT, at close to $3,400 was slightly lower than the median of $3,700 reported in the Joint Autonomous University Graduate Employment Survey 2020. These figures are not directly comparable because the demographics of both groups differ. The economic context for the introduction of SGUT and GRIT also differ. SGUT focused on increasing capacity to reduce graduate unemployment during an economic crisis, while our current GRIT program focuses on the provision of a limited number of quality traineeship opportunities to provide reassurance to graduates. Hence, the outcome of GRIT may not mirror that of SGUT. Now, there have been several questions raised over how GRIT can support graduates to gain sustained full-time employment eventually. We have designed the scheme with a few key considerations to achieve this. First, we will assure that the traineeships are of high quality so that they can improve the employability of graduates in the longer term. Mr. Edward Chia, Ms. Goh Soo-Ki, and Mr. Liang Eng Hua asked about the selection of companies currently on board for GRIT. Workforce Singapore, WSG, has worked with sector agencies to identify leading companies as host organizations for the program. These companies come from key growth sectors such as financial services and information and communications, which offer a large number of good jobs. They have a good track record of hiring and training locals and are committed to offer a good mix of traineeship roles for graduates from all of our educational institutions. To Ms. Chia's, Ms. Goh's, Ms. Jessica Tan's, Ms. Nadia Ahmad Samdin's, and Dr. Hamid Razak's questions about how the ministry will monitor the quality of the traineeship experience, host companies will need to submit a traineeship development plan with learning outcomes that WSG will regularly review. WSG will also conduct check-ins with trainees to monitor and to ensure the quality of the traineeship experience. These structured traineeships with leading companies will position our trainees in good state for jobs and for roles beyond or within the host organizations. Ms. Chong, Mr. Patrick Tay, and Ms. Lee Hui Ying asked how we would support the conversion of trainees to full-time positions. To strengthen the pathway to full-time employment, WSG will strongly encourage host organizations to offer full-time employment where possible. To support host organizations to do so even before the traineeships end, we will continue to provide allowance subsidies for host organizations that convert trainees who have completed at least 3 months of the traineeship. In addition, as part of the check-in with the trainees before the end of the traineeship, WSG will also proactively share employment resources, including career matching services, to support trainees' transition to full-time employment. Second, we have designed the scheme to provide support without crowding out full-time job positions that companies might otherwise offer to fresh graduates. To Mr. Gerald Giams and Ms. Poli San's question on the initial number of places, we have started GRID with an initial capacity of 800 places, 500 private sector and 300 public sector. Last week, when I released the labour market report for ending June 2025, I've also shared that there are 30,000 entry-level job positions available today for our fresh graduates to apply. So I hope you can understand why we have very tightly ensured that this program does not end up cannibalizing. This helps to safeguard both the quality of traineeships and at the same time manage the risk of crowding out full-time positions. Now, to Mr. Louis Chua's question on how we determine the traineeship allowance, we kept the maximum at $2,400, which is approximately half of the median starting salary of fresh graduates from autonomous universities. This is similar to the quantum for SGUT and is calibrated to ensure that the trainees will continue to prioritize full-time roles. We also kept the duration of traineeships at 6 months to encourage employers to seriously consider the trainees for a higher paying full-time job at the end of the traineeship. And this relates to Mr. Chua's other question on why trainees will not be considered employees of the host organization. GRID is meant to offer traineeships that builds skill and early work experience through on-the-job training. It is not meant to be an employment subsidy, typically used to support groups that face more serious and chronic barriers to employment, such as persons with disabilities. Now, if companies see the value of trainees and they wish to engage them on a longer basis, they should offer full-time positions. Third, GRID is designed to mitigate the risk of displacing existing employees, including mid-career workers. We have carefully selected host organizations that actively participate in workforce development efforts, including MUM WSG programs that support mid-career workers. To Mr. Ng Su Xuan's question, WSG will conduct checks on host companies' recent retrenchment activities to ensure that the traineeship roles are not similar to that of impacted workers. And this also speaks to Mr. Kenneth Tiong's question on the risk of employers using traineeship grants to displace employees. Moreover, the traineeship allowance is calibrated to be lower than what host organizations can receive for mature individuals that are undergoing attachments under the Mid-Career Pathways program. The government stands ready to roll out further support if necessary. We are prepared to increase traineeship places, extend the program if economic conditions worsen, or if there's demand for more traineeship places due to good outcomes for both graduates and employers. In the meantime, we encourage all of our fresh graduates to tap on the extensive career guidance and job matching support that has been made available through the Institutes of Higher Learning, through WSG, and through NTUC's E2I. To Dr. Charlene Chen's query, to complement the education and career guidance, or ECG, provided by MOE or the IHLs, WSG and its partners offers a variety of career services and resources to students seeking to enter the workforce. And these advisory services includes not just career advisory, but also coaching services provided by both WSG and E2I. And they can be complemented with industry insights offered by WSG's volunteer career advisors. Individuals can also look for job opportunities on WSG's My Careers Future portal, utilizing its Careers Finder feature to explore potential careers and upskilling options. Thank you.
Mr. Xiao Chen.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to ask the Minister if, beyond cyclical factors, the Ministry also assessed that there are structural factors driving the graduate employment situation, including, for example, the displacement of entry-level jobs by AI. And would the Ministry consider traineeships as a solution to some of these structural factors driving graduate employment? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his SQ. I agree with the member. Gen AI is indeed reshaping entry-level jobs. And increasingly, advanced models automate quite a lot of the more routine and mundane tasks. But I think that contemporaneously, this shift is actually also creating new opportunities in AI-related fields. And of course, it really elevates the importance of soft skills, for instance, like critical thinking, creativity. And what we hope to do is to ensure that our young graduates continue to be ready, flexible, nimble enough to be able to adapt, to leverage on AI positively, particularly given the world that we're in today, rapid disruptions, rapid pace of transformation. So to prepare our young graduates for career success in an AI era, beyond the traineeships, the attachments, the government has put in place a mix of upskilling programs, work-based learning, as well as career guidance initiatives. And under the National AI Strategy 2.0, for example, we are scaling up programs like AI apprenticeships and their AI apprenticeship programs so that we can continue to boost our pipeline of young AI practitioners. Beyond the inclusion of AI-related modules within the curriculum at our IHLs, our Institutes of Higher Learning, to build up our students' digital fluencies, literacies, we have been evolving our education system. We work closely with Minister Lee's ministry so that we can actually continue to place an even greater focus on the soft skills that would continue to be important for career success in an AI era. In addition, we have also stepped up support for career planning whilst they are in flight through the universities, through the IHLs, and WSG's career guidance efforts is integrated with them so that we can support them to journey better and help them to work towards achieving their career goals.
Mr. Edward Chia.
Thank you, Speaker. I understand that most of our students studying our Institute of Higher Learnings already go through internship programs, and the effort is, of course, the intent of equipping our students with relevant or young job seekers with relevant work experience. And some of these internships are also supported by existing government programs such as the Global Ready Talent Program. So in this context, may I ask the Minister first, how does the GRID program differ from existing internships in terms of expectations, oversight, mentorship, learning objectives, and Minister also mentioned about soft skills? And will there be efforts to also harmonize this with the Global Ready Talent Program? And second, the Minister also mentioned that there will be regular check-ins with trainees. May I ask how frequent will these check-ins be, and how will these actually enhance the overall trainee experiences and outcomes? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
I thank Mr. Chia for his SQ. I want to keep it short because I understand that quite a number of members who have filed PQs who also want to raise other SQs. But I think suffice to say, when we create programs like this, while we try to be very precise, very differentiated towards a particular need, the other programs run contemporaneously. GRID is intended to be a temporary scheme. This is meant to support fresh graduates amidst the current economic uncertainty. And of course, we will monitor the take-up closely. We will work with our partner, the program partner, to map out and to see whether there's a need to scale up capacity and provide that lateral links into all of these other programs, including the Global Ready Talent Program that you alluded to. Now, before the end of the 12-month period, we will also review the outcomes And of course, we will then consider the need to extend the program depending on how the labor market situation evolves at that particular point in time. Now, perhaps on a slightly more uplifting note, we did end the first half of this year with a growth in GDP. Our GDP grew year on year by 4.3%. So this is really a very preemptive approach to try to resolve and help our fresh graduates to gain that confidence, to gain that exposure, to build their networks. The rest of the schemes will continue to run in tandem. There are also a whole slew of measures that have announced as MOM COS budget this year on the Enterprise Workforce Transformation Package, and NTUC working with the different agencies. They have also put up a $200 million budget, or in fact, envelope to develop CTCs with all of the different companies. So I think these measures come collectively, and I think that today, just to keep the scope of where we are on grid itself, it is meant to be a very tightly curated scheme focusing on that delta of fresh graduates looking for opportunities for industrial attachments. Thank you.
I do hope to clear all the PQs for this. So, Mr. Patrick Tay, short and concise ones. And the same applies to Minister later.
Two supplementary questions for Minister. Firstly, on abuse by employers. Secondly, on morale of grid trainees. On the first SQ on abuse by employers, there may be employers who are keen and able to hire graduates on permanent employment, but then use grid as sort of like a backdoor approach. How can MOM address this possible abuse? Secondly, on the grid trainees. I know the scheme only starts on 1st October, but if grid trainees, many of them may be on the grid scheme, but working alongside maybe some of their classmates or schoolmates from last year, previous years, who may be working alongside and doing the same job, but drawing sometimes maybe twice the pay because they are on permanent employment. How do we manage the morale of such trainees? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
Mr. Speaker, I'll try to keep it short. Now, WSG has implemented safeguards under the GRID program to protect trainees from potential abuses from host organizations. So there is a traineeship agreement which has to be signed by both trainees and the host companies. And this details out what is the approved traineeship allowance, what are the working hours, the leave entitlements, including medical and annual leave, which is offered by the host organizations. And then this is submitted to the program partner for oversight. The appointed program partner will then conduct check-ins with trainees to ensure that they are settling in well and that they have good traineeship experience. Trainees will also have access to a dedicated hotline and email to support and to report any issues. And the appointed program partner will intervene where necessary to address concerns. And we work very closely with the Singapore Business Federation on this itself. Now, we also started the scheme with a lower number of places so that we want to avoid crowding out all these potential full-time positions, and we want to maintain the quality of that traineeship. The purpose for the GRID trainees is not to do the same work, but it's to give them the opportunity to pick up the industry experiences, the practical skill sets, hopefully the soft skills as well as our sharing to early on member Mr. CS PQ, so that eventually they can quickly get full-time employment after the traineeship duration of up to 6 months is complete. And of course, we urge all companies to consider these trainees, offer them permanent employment after their traineeship. Thank you.
Mr. Leng.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have been hearing about companies hiring less entry-level jobs. So can I ask the Minister if companies in Singapore are indeed also hiring fewer entry-level jobs? And if indeed this is a long-term trend, in addition to GRID, what other policy measures may be necessary to support fresh graduate employment?
Minister Tan.
There are some companies who are limiting the hires of entry-level jobs. But there are also many companies that have actually ramped up the hiring of entry-level jobs. The entire scope of our economy is actually quite wide. We are quite well differentiated. In many of the growth sectors that I've earlier on talked about, and that's how we approach them to help, these are the companies that are still actively hiring. So for the purpose of GRID, we have worked with close to 50 companies in the growth sector, and they have committed to offering places under the GRID program. They span quite a diverse range of sectors, including financial services, manufacturing, the ICT and media, wholesale trade, and professional services. I mean, I can share with you a list of some of these companies. Includes prominent industry leaders, OCBC, DBS, Singapore Technologies, the semiconductor companies Micron, Samcor, Grab, Sea, Standard Chartered Bank. They have all stepped forward to offer meaningful traineeship opportunities. And many of these roles would include, I mean, the list is very long. What I've actually done is to also request my MOM colleagues, we are going to also publish the list of job vacancies in all of the different sectors for our fresh graduates and our graduates to apply for, and this will be made available on a recurring basis. So some of these traineeship roles that I alluded to include data analysts, RPA specialists. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, research and development, policy and strategy, as well as functions in marketing, in human resources, and in business development. And of course, I think you know we are all rapidly aging. And from where I used to come from, healthcare, they're always hiring. So I hope that gives you that breadth and that spread of the type of entry-level jobs that are available. Thank you.
Ms. Gozuki.
Thank you, Speaker. One SQ for Min. With regards to the GRIDS at Gulf program, will the government commit to offering employment to trainees at the end of their traineeship, or at least set a clear expectation that the government agency should seek to hire these trainees into permanent roles rather than treating the program as a stopgap measure? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
I thank Ms. Goh for that very incisive exhortation. Certainly, is it incisive or incisive? Certainly, from the government's perspective, the 300 places offered by the government places, we hope that the moment they come on board, that industrial attachment, the industry attachment would indeed inspire and encourage many of these young trainees to sign up and join the government. I would also like to remind perhaps the honourable member, that there's a separate 2,400 careers at Gov. And I certainly hope that more than 300 would apply to the 2,400 vacancies we have for careers at Gov. And we will do our best to facilitate their onboarding. I hope that gives you that reassurance. Thank you.
Ms. Jessica Tan.
Thank you, Speaker. I just have two SQs for Minister. One on the point about after the GRID program, for these, is there any specific measures to map some of these vacancies that you spoke about with regards to these trainees who have completed the program? Because the host organizations have would have provided great exposure and experience and training, which some of our SMEs may not be able to do, and these graduates would then be more ready for the roles. The second question is that if the entry-level jobs are really going away, and in some cases they are, will this traineeship program lead to also, after the completion, even it's a 12-month program, but your traineeships are 3 and 6 months, will it lead to a sort of cycle of the trainees going for another cycle of traineeship? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
I thank Ms. Tan for her question. Now, early on, I did share quite a fair bit of insight on how we're built on the SGUT traineeship. So, very similar to the SG United traineeships, we'll track how many trainees would have found employment after the GRID program and whether it was with their host organization as of the outset. The appointed program partner, while the trainee is in flight, will conduct regular check-ins with trainees to ensure that they're settling in well and that experience is generally beneficial and it's good. And host companies who are part of this program will also be required to submit a traineeship development plan and with learning outcomes so that WSG can regularly review. And the last bit, I said to strengthen the pathway to full-time employment, WSG will strongly encourage host organizations to offer full-time employment where possible. And to do so, to support host organizations to do so, to get them to convert these GRID trainees earlier, even before the traineeships end, we will continue to provide allowance subsidies for host organizations to convert the trainees who have completed at least 3 months. So the entire period of traineeship is up to 6 months, but after 3 months, if they convert, we will still continue to provide the subsidy. So WSG, simultaneously, before the end of the traineeship, WSG will proactively work with them to share employment services, including career matching services, to support the trainees' transition into full-time employment. So there's a whole slew of all these measures that we put in place to facilitate their onboarding to full-time employment.
Mr. Gerald Giam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I would imagine the demand for the GRID scheme will far exceed the 800 places available. Will academic performance or prior job experience influence candidate selection for GRID? If so, how will MOM ensure that the scheme does not disproportionately favor high-achieving candidates who are likely to secure jobs on their own, while leaving those with weaker academic results or limited practical experience still struggling to find employment? My concern is less about the cannibalization of entry-level positions that the Minister mentioned earlier, but more about ensuring that job seekers with weaker credentials are not inadvertently excluded from this scheme.
Minister Tan.
I thank Mr. Giam for that SQ. I want to bring the member back to the chart that I distributed earlier. The delta of fresh graduates looking that increase in numbers is about 1,700. So this initial number, and let me highlight and underscore that it's an initial number of 800 traineeship positions, is actually approximately half of the increase in the number of job-seeking graduates in the 2025 cohort compared to the 2024 cohort at the same point in June last year. And over time, you've seen that over that 1 year, in my combined PQ reply earlier on, for those graduates in 2024, that from 40%, I think it was 48%, is actually gone up to 88% in June this year, that cohort. So we expect that with time, this delta will continue to drop because it was only in June that we got the number. So we expect that that the numbers going into full-time employment would continue to increase. So because of that, as a result of the number of unemployed graduates gradually falling, because more of them land jobs over time, because, as I've said, there are also 30,000 full-time job vacancies for fresh graduates that were available. So our end objective is to channel as many graduates as possible into full-time jobs. To your point about grades and how those with better grades taking up the grade traineeship, my sense is that those who have better grades and soft skills, those who have actually gotten a lot more experience, and those who have actually done a lot more internships and industrial traineeships while they were undergoing studies, they would have already been able to secure many of these jobs. What we are trying to do is to make sure that we want to level up the playing field for those people who may not have had the opportunity, either because they were taken up by other responsibilities while they were still undergoing the training within the IHLs itself. And as I've said, I think if the member over time feels that there are other opportunities, there are other ways, we're happy to listen to suggestions and solutions from yourself. And depending on GDP growth, depending on how the economy continues to progress and move along, we will not hesitate to ramp up the traineeships, ramp up all of the support resources available, because at the end, if you look at the entire history of what we've been doing over the last many years, it is really focusing on developing a very strong Singapore core and Singapore workforce. I hope that gives you the reassurance. Thank you.
I'll just allow for one final SQ. Dr. Hamid Raza.
Thank you, sir. There's two questions for Minister. The Minister did mention that the scheme is meant to be temporary. Are there any specific milestones or indicators that the Ministry has in mind before this scheme will cease or morph into a more, or be delved into a more permanent scheme? And number two, I understand that we have taken in host organizations that have credibility and are able to give the development value to the trainees. Will we also be considering our local startups and companies that may similarly be able to offer value to our local graduates? Thank you.
Minister Tan.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think to respect the time, I think we're past the question time.
You are absolutely right, so keep yours short as well.
So first, okay, so to the second point itself, certainly we've kept it very tight as of the outset, but if the scheme is successful and we're able to extend to more companies, we certainly will work with the startups and the SMEs as well. For the first point, we will monitor our GDP growth. We will also look at the unemployment statistics, particularly the long-term unemployment statistics. If you look at where we are today, the long-term unemployment rate for all of us here, the resident unemployment is still very low, below 1%. And our unemployment, the spot unemployment, is about just below 3%, about 2.8, 2.9%. So at below 1%, a long-term unemployment rate, that 2.2% to 2.1% is actually churn. In any healthy economy, you would expect that churn to happen. It means that these people typically either take a gap, a couple of weeks or months, but within 6 months, they get back to a new job. So today, like I said, I mean, there is that fear, that angst, that apprehension, but the reality on the ground is such that we are still in a relatively stable state. Of course, things can change the next 1-2 quarters, and we are cognizant of that. But what we are trying to do is to provide that reassurance, because to the individual looking for the job, he is most affected and impacted by. No amount of statistics that I share with them will be able to allay his concerns and his fears and his anxieties. So we want to scope this thing carefully to make sure that we can help them and we can reach out to all of them with maximum benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Yip, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you. I know you filed a question, but you have the honor of kicking off the debate next.